we turn it over to Dr. Bonnet, I would like to introduce you to him. Dr. Bonnet, thank you for being here today. So Jonathan Bonnet is a board-certified family, sports, obesity, and lifestyle medicine physician. He is an associate professor affiliate at Stanford University School of Medicine. And Jonathan has a background in exercise physiology and is a certified personal trainer. So I feel like we get the best of both worlds here. We have somebody that's an expert in exercise, but also a physician. I'm going to just turn things over to you.
All righty. Well, thank you so much for that nice introduction, Michelle. I am delighted to be here with you all today, talking about one of my favorite topics, exercise in medicine. So I have a couple of quick announcements before we get started here. I have a little joke, an Easter joke for everyone here. But anyway, my background is in sports medicine, and I am wearing a University of Florida shirt. For those of you who watch NCAA basketball, they won the national championship this year. So I'm not technically affiliated with them now, but I am going to support them in their college basketball prowess. But before we get started into exercise, I have an Easter joke for anyone, and feel free to put the answer in the chat here. But what is the Easter Bunny's favorite kind of workout? Michelle, if you know the answer too, we didn't go over this, so.
No, we didn't.
Oh, hopping. All right, so we got a lot of good hoppings in there. Yeah, so exercises are its favorite, and bunny hops. So yeah, all you hops in there got it right. And yeah, got to keep those glutes hoppy. So, all right. So now we did our little Easter joke. So anyway, I'm going to put some slides up, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. But if you have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will get to them hopefully towards the end. And we are going to do a little bit of invitation for anyone who wants to get a little workout in. So get whatever you need. If you need to get some more comfy clothes, feel free to do that too. It's not going to be anything too intense or crazy, but should hopefully be a fun break. All right, and so we're going to put some slides up here. And Michelle, these can be seen okay?
Yep, everything looks great.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So exercise is some good medicine, and so we're going to talk about that today. And really, there's probably 4 questions I'm going to try to cover with you all. What exercise is, why it's important, a little bit of commentary about its role in weight loss and weight management. What are the best exercises to do? Right, people always are interested in that. And then also some practical tips on how you can start to incorporate this in your own life. But before I do get started though, I put a nice little quote here on the side, which I think is so important. The start is what stops most people. Most people want to plan and think about what their exercise program is going to look like. And I would challenge anyone out there who is still thinking about this, that don't overthink it, just do it. So just take those first steps and don't worry too much about what the program looks like or if it's perfect or not. The biggest part of exercise for most people is just starting. So keep that in mind throughout sort of the presentation as we go through here. But 2 things I wanted to clarify with everyone, just so we're on the same page in terms of language. So there is often a confusion of physical activity and exercise. And the best way I sort of think about these 2 terms is physical activity is any time you move your body or do anything. If you pick something up, that's physical activity. Stand up, sit down, move, grab something. Anything that moves a muscle is basically physical activity. This is different from exercise, where exercise has to be a planned, structured, repetitive, and purposeful type of movement with the idea and purpose of improving fitness, improving performance, or just improving health. So everything that is exercise is also physical activity, but not every type of physical activity is necessarily exercise. So certain things could be exercise if you're doing it with the purpose of improving health, but it could also not necessarily be exercise if you're just sort of doing it for some other purpose. But lots of activities can still fit into this. Even things like gardening can actually be exercise, again, if you're doing it sort of for a health purpose. Now, I want to try and make this a little bit engaging with people. And so we're going to talk about you for a moment. And don't worry, we're not going to put you on camera or on the spot, but I do want you to at least think about this. So this is sort of your own personal assessment of how you're doing activity-wise. So we're going to go through the physical activity vital sign together, and I want you to sort of think about these answers in your own mind, and then we're going to come back to it later. So the first question for you all to think about: how many days a week do you engage in moderate to strenuous exercise? So this would be at least a brisk walk or something more intense than that. So how many days do you do something like that? And then on the days that you do it, how many minutes do you engage in that type of exercise? So let's say 3 days a week, you go for a 15-minute brisk walk. So if you took the 3 days and the 15 minutes, you'd multiply those together and you get 45 minutes per week. So think about what those numbers look like for you and figure out how many minutes per week you're doing moderate to vigorous activity. And I want you to keep that number in mind. We're going to come back to it later during the talk today. And then the third question is, how many days a week do you perform muscle strengthening exercises? This could be body weight exercises. This could be going to a gym, just using bands, doing stuff at home, anything you like. How many days do you typically do that? Somewhere between 0 and 7. And remember that number too. We're going to come back to these, but this is sort of just your pre-test to kind of see where you're at right now. So why should you exercise, right? I'm the exercise guy. I'm going to tell you how awesome and wonderful it is. But before I show you any data or statistics or anything else, I want to tell you why I exercise, right? And it's not because it is going to make me live longer. I don't work out to add days to my life. I work out to add life to my days. And I think a lot of medicine, what we don't do well is sell people on how much better you can feel right now, today, not necessarily tomorrow or 10 years from now. Exercise makes you feel better now, right? And I understand that maybe at the beginning, it does take a little bit of sort of getting used to, but I promise you, if you can get through that first sort of transition period, you are going to start feeling better right here, right now. And so for many people, this can do things like clearing your head, enhancing your performance, reducing stress. I mean, it can contribute to helping you look better. It can give you the freedom to live the life you want to live, do the things that you want to do. But I think also more importantly, we also forget that exercise can be fun. It does not have to be torture. It does not have to be something you must suffer through endlessly. Right? I think all of us can remember when we were kids, if you bring a kid to a playground, they just start running around. They climb on things, they jump on things, they play sports, they hang out with their friends. So much activity is just built into normal life. And as we sort of get older, we sort of lose that sense of just wonder and fun. And I think activity really can be something that can be communal, it can be social, it can be something, again, that brings you joy and meaning in life. And so I think the more you can resurrect some of those feelings about things you did enjoy, you can find that it actually doesn't have to be a miserable thing at all. And importantly, physical activity is one of the currencies that allows you to live the life you want to live, right? If you want to travel, if you want to visit places, if you want to remain independent, be able to carry your own groceries, carry your suitcase through an airport, visit people, be able to play with grandchildren, pick them up off the ground, be functional, run a 5K. All of these things require you to be able to be physically active and to some degree have some degree of fitness. So again, exercise really is important throughout the entire lifespan. So figuring out ways that we can work with it to incorporate it makes a huge difference in the quality of our lives. Now, I will give you some data. I am a scientist and I do care about research and being an evidence-based person. And so this is sort of a graph I'm going to walk you through here. But basically, this just shows you how many minutes of physical activity people were doing throughout the week. So on the left side of this graph is 0 minutes. On the right side is 450 minutes. And then going from top to bottom, you have the overall risk of dying from anything. So this could be a heart attack, a stroke, cancer, Alzheimer's, you name it. And what you see here is that the orange graph here, the more active you are, the lower your risk of dying from anything is. And there's a couple important points about this. One, as soon as you start doing anything, you start getting tremendous benefits. So this comes back to that first point of literally just taking those first steps are the most important steps in terms of improving your overall health. So again, that first hour a week is critical. So just getting up to that is so important. It gives you tons and tons of return on investment. Again, there's no real obvious best amount either, right? And so I'm going to tell you what the recommendations are. But again, you can see the more active you generally are, the more recommendations or the more benefits you can typically get. And it doesn't necessarily seem to be at a risk of dying from even high amounts of activity, but you can start to have overtraining injuries and things. But if we look and say, well, what are the guidelines of what we're supposed to be doing? It's about 150 to 300 minutes of moderate physical activity per week, sort of right in the middle of this chart. So that is sort of a nice target to shoot for. But again, you don't have to be perfect. And again, you're still getting tons of health benefits, even just those first few minutes that you start to do anything. So this is one way to sort of think about, okay, well, what are the targets? Where am I at? And what is realistic for me to work towards? And I just told you about ways that will help you not die from things. But I think a better way to even think about this is how much more life you get to live. So if you can get to those 150 minutes every week, you typically will live about an average of 3 years longer than if you didn't exercise at all. So those are 3 more years you get to enjoy life, play with grandkids, travel, do whatever it is that you love to do. And guess what? If you're exercising, you're probably also going to be pretty healthy and functional to be able to do all the fun things that are important to you. Now, this slide is going to have a lot of statistics on. This is the one slide where I put everything on, and I call this my billion-dollar billboard slide. And this is because exercise is so powerful and so wonderful, it's almost ridiculous how many good things it does for you. And each one of the bullet points that I'm going to talk about just very briefly here, if we turn that into a pharmaceutical drug that we could sell you and prescribe to you, each one of those would probably be $1 billion product. That's how impressive the benefits of exercise are. So if we go through this list here, exercise reduces the heart disease by 40%, stroke by 27%. It's more effective than medicines for post-stroke rehab. It reduces the incidence of diabetes by almost 50%. It's more effective than medicine for reducing prediabetes progression. It reduces high blood pressure by almost 50%, mortality and recurrence of breast cancer by almost 50%, colon cancer 60%, Alzheimer's 33%, and it treats depression effectively as Prozac or behavioral therapy for mild depression. And so each one of these things literally would be a blockbuster drug that could be sold for billions of dollars. Now, if you think about exercise, it literally is doing all of these things at the same time, right? And this is basically all the things that kill us and all the things that cause chronic disease. So heart disease, strokes, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, even mental health, depression, all of these things are things that exercise can help with. So it really is as close to a miracle cure as we will ever get, right? If it was a pill, everyone would take it for sure, because look at all of the tremendous benefits you get. And guess what? It doesn't even have to cost anything other than your time, right? There's no monetary exchange you have to do to be active. You can actually do this in the comfort of your own home. So anyway, it's one thing to talk about exercise. It's another thing to actually do it. And so I think in the spirit of this presentation, I think we would be remiss to sit here for 30 or 60 minutes and not do any exercise, right? Let's get some benefits right now. So I'm going to close my slides in just a moment here, but we're going to do a brief, this will be no more than a minute, quick little workout we're going to do. And I invite you all to stand up if you can. If you cannot, or if you need to stay sitting, we can modify it for you too. But we're going to do 3 movements. We're going to do a chair squat, which is basically just sitting down, getting up out of your chair, sitting back down in your chair. If you're sitting in your chair, you can basically just extend one leg out and then bring it back in. And then we're going to do a standing cross crunch. This requires a little bit of balance. So if your balance is not good, again, you can do this sitting in the chair. You're basically going to bring your right elbow to your left leg and then your left elbow to your right leg. I'll show you how to do it in just a moment here. And we're going with a push-up. If you have a desk or a stable surface, you can do it right in front of you. If you have a wall, you can go over to the wall and use that as well. So you can determine how difficult you want it to be. And if you're really, really strong and fit, you can do them on the floor. I will not be doing that today, but those are sort of the 3 that we're going to do real quick. So I'm going to pull my slides down real quick so you can actually see me here. And we're going to do the air squats first. So I'm going to do my best to try and put myself in the camera so you can see me, but we're going to do 8 of each of these. So we're going to start with the squats. All right, so we're just going to stand here, and I'm going to try and do both ways. So just come down to the back of your chair, and then come back up. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. All right, very good. And I have shorts on because I didn't want to get hot and sweaty while I was training. So we're going to do the cross crunch. So for this one, again, elbows behind your head. You're going to bring your elbows across your body. So we're going to go right to left. So that would be 1. Then we're going to go left to right. That would be 2. And we're going to 3, and then 4. And you can do the sitting too. 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, pretty easy peasy. The last one is the push-up. So if you have a desk, you can use the desk. I'm going to use the back of a chair, which is a little more risky. So make sure your chair is stable if you are going to use it. You do not want your chair to fly out in front of you. That hurts. So we're going to do the push-up here. So we're just going to come down and push back up. And Michelle's got a nice wall over there, so perfect.
I'm using the wall.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And you can change the angle as you get fitter. The more upright you are, the easier the movement is. The more horizontal you are to the ground, the harder it is. 6, 7, and 8. Okay. All right, so that was our fun little fitness minute. We're going to go back to the slides, but hopefully you got at least some ideas and some blood flowing, and you get a little free workout in, which is not a bad thing for a little talk. So I'm going to put some slides back up, but thank you all for participating.
That was fun.
Yeah, so it's a little quick thing you can do. You don't need any equipment, and there's lots of variations of something like this. So you can do this at home. All right, it's a nice little exercise snack. Okay, so back to our presentation. So we did a nice little break here to get some health benefits, which is super lovely and beautiful. Now we're going to switch to weight loss. And this is really what I do with my day job. And people always ask about weight loss and exercise. And this is the one area where I actually have some bad news for all of you. It really is unfortunate that exercise does so many wonderful things, but it is not the best strategy to help you lose weight, right? And so you really cannot outrun a bad diet. I mean, thankfully, you were all in the FullPlateLiving program, so hopefully your diets are actually pretty good now. But again, you can't really compensate for eating really, really poorly with exercise alone. On average, if you go from not doing anything to meeting the 150-minute guidelines, you lose about 4 to 5 pounds of body weight over those few months. So you do lose some, but it's not a lot. So I don't want people to ever feel like their exercise program is not working because they're not losing weight. It is not typically what exercise does. Now, if you compare exercise to diet is more effective than exercise. I know it kills me to say that, but it's the truth. So exercise, even if you have a more intense exercise program, again, average weight loss, if you look at all the research, is maybe only 8 pounds or so. With diet, it can be like 15 pounds, right? So almost twice as good. But you don't have to do just one of them. You can do both of them, and it's even better. So it's not diet or exercise, it's diet and exercise. So again, the nice thing is you can get all of the benefits from all of these things, and exercise does so many other things that are not just weight loss. But I do want to give you the reason why exercise is not good for weight loss, rather than just tell you, because I think if you understand, you probably remember it a little bit better. And this is because to burn a pound of fat, you need to create a calorie deficit of about 3,500 calories. That's approximately what the energy amount is. Now, if you want to burn 100 calories exercising, you have to either walk or jog a mile, right? You can walk it, you can jog it, you can run it. You still burn about 100 calories. It's just the amount of time it takes you to do it changes. If you bike 2.5 miles, that's 100 calories. And if you swim a quarter of a mile, 100 calories. So if you wanted to get 3,500, that means you need to walk or jog the equivalent of 35 miles, or bike almost 90 miles, or swim almost 9 miles. So these are doable, but it would take time to get there. And again, if you did this in 1 week, this would be the equivalent of 5 miles a day. So again, is it possible? Yes. Are most people doing 5 miles a day? No, they are not, at least based on statistics. Now, the other challenging part is not only do you have to get those 35 miles, but guess what? If you run a marathon, your body is going to be hungry, and it's going to tell you we need to eat more energy because of all of the energy you are expending. So you actually probably have to walk closer to 45 miles than 35. So your body compensates some for your activity. It doesn't compensate all of it, but it compensates some of it. So again, maybe not the best strategy to help you lose weight, but exercise is one of the most important things for helping you maintain your current weight or the weight you already lost. So one, exercise is just, if you're moving, you're obviously not eating, which is an obvious part of this. But two, if you're going to go exercise, you're probably not going to go eat at a buffet right beforehand. And oftentimes you may not feel hungry right after you exercise. So there's actually a whole amount of time where you're actually consuming less calories overall. Exercise does burn calories, although probably not as much as we realize. And even after your workout, it does burn a few calories. But again, probably only 50 to 120 calories. You're not some furnace that Men's Health or Women's Health would have you believe burning thousands of calories. It's pretty small. And the other nice thing about exercise is it builds muscle, right? And so muscle is more metabolically active than fat. For every pound of muscle you add, you burn an extra 6 calories per day for every pound of muscle. So again, a nice way that you can help maintain your weight loss. And the other beautiful part of exercise is that it does improve your percent body fat. So if you add muscle, your percentage of body fat goes down. If you lose fat, your percentage of body fat goes down. The other thing I hear often from people is, my clothes fit better, but my scale weight is not changing. What is going on? Well, what happens is a pound of fat takes up a lot more space and volume than a pound of muscle. The screen shows you what a pound of fat and a pound of muscle look like. Muscle is much more dense than fat. So you can be a smaller version of yourself despite your scale weight staying exactly the same. And most people would say you will quote unquote look better if you are a smaller version of yourself. So adding more muscle is a very good thing to do, even if your scale weight is not going down. So what are the best exercises to do? The short answer here is the one that you'll actually do, right? They can all be good. They can all provide benefits, but you have to do them to get the benefits. So you can literally pick any exercise you want, and I would encourage you to do so. It's way more important for you to enjoy it than for it to be optimal. And the other thing, again, just to reiterate that point, it's so easy to put this off and say, well, when I get a treadmill, when I get a Peloton, when I get a gym membership. Again, I love this Nike quote. Yesterday, you said tomorrow, right? We're really good at making excuses for why we can't start a program today. We got this big project at work, yada, yada, yada. The best thing to do is take the few minutes that you have and just do it today. It doesn't have to be long. You can walk for 2.5 minutes outside your house and walk right back. That's a 5-minute activity break that you wouldn't have done otherwise. So don't wait for perfection to limit your progress now, right? It may be a long time before you have an hour and a half to drive to the gym and do all the things you want to do, but you can find 5 or 10 minutes. And I would challenge everyone to see if you can find at least that, because that'll get you started. And again, you're working towards sort of those 150 to 300 minutes, and you can do them any way you want. You really don't want to do them all at one time. You would want to break it up across multiple days. And that's sort of the aerobic piece. And then you want to do some resistance training too. We're going to talk about what both of these sort of look like and give you some more details. But again, all of the recommendations are about doing it your way, right? And this, whether you're in a wheelchair or have limitations or have a rotator cuff problem or hip pain or knee pain, we can always modify activity so that you can do it safely and without pain. So again, there's wonderful professionals, physical therapists, trainers who can find exercises that will actually help most of your musculoskeletal complaints. They won't make them worse. But when we're talking about exercise, I've talked about this moderate intensity thing. I've talked about this vigorous intensity thing. I think it really is important to understand how hard you actually need to work to get all these benefits. I usually see two things. I usually see people who are walking their dog and stopping every few feet so the dog can go to the bathroom and sniff things and smell things. And they think, man, I'm getting a lot of exercise and working out. You are getting some light intensity exercise for sure, but you're not into the moderate range. So you're not going to get all of those health benefits I was talking about. The other group I see are people who end up going to a gym or CrossFit, and they are just killing themselves to the point where after their workout, they'll feel sore the entire week and can't hardly move. Well, you don't need to do that either to get all these health benefits, right? You can actually be in the 5 to 6 out of 10 range, so the moderate intensity, or the 7 to 8 out of 10. So I put the rating of perceived exertion here, and this is a way you can subjectively rate how difficult it feels like you're working. So you want to be working at about a 5 or 6 intensity on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being as hard as you could possibly go. That's like 50 or 60%. You could even be the 7 to 80%. So it should feel like you could still do more effort than what you're doing, and you're going to get all those health benefits we've been talking about. The other way you can do this so you don't have to memorize numbers is something called the talk test. So if you're shooting for that moderate intensity range, you should be able to talk. So you could have I could say a full sentence here without having issues, but I couldn't sing my favorite Taylor Swift song, right? So you wouldn't be able to do that, but you would be able to at least have a conversation with someone. Now, if you can't even get a whole sentence out without huffing and puffing, that means you're already in the vigorous intensity range. So again, this is another way you can sort of figure out how intense you need to be. And your body will change over time. So the fitter you get, the more amount of volume of exercise you can do while you could still continue to talk or continue to sing or whatever. So these are two different ways you can measure your own intensity to make sure you're working at an appropriate level. And this is just examples of activities that could be moderate or could be vigorous. And again, there's lots of creative things that are not just being on a treadmill or sitting on a bike, right? Ballroom dancing is up there, gardening, jumping rope, hiking up a hill, walking around with a backpack on, playing tennis, water aerobics. There's lots of different ways you can be active. So again, I would just challenge people that if you don't like any of these, keep looking. There's tons of fun ways that you can move your body and have fun. Now, when we talk about the muscle strengthening piece, this is something you'll typically try and do 2 to 3 times a week. Typically 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 15 repetitions. And again, this is the general guidance, is to work all your major muscle groups. Now I'm going to try and simplify this a little bit because some of this is confusing and there's a lot to remember. I don't even know what all the major muscle groups are. There's probably debate on, is this or is this not a major muscle group? But I'll give you a much better way to think about this. So instead of memorizing muscles, my philosophy is to memorize movements. And I'll display, or I'll show you how to do these, but my picture is probably a little bit tiny. But the way I break it down is your upper body, your lower body, and then your core. So when you think about your upper body, the idea here is to create strength and balance and symmetry around your joints. So the easy way to do this is to take, let's say, a vertical movement. So if you're standing here, if you push your hands straight up overhead, that would be a shoulder press. And if you push something up, you should pull something down. That would be a pull up, a chin up. It could be a pull down, whatever. So pushing something up, pulling something down, that basically hits your shoulders and your back and your lat. Now, if you're going to do a vertical one, you should also do a horizontal one. So now it would be pushing something out, and this would be a wall push-up or a regular push-up. And if you push something out, you should pull something in. This is sort of like a row. So pushing out, pushing in, and that really hits your entire upper body. It hits all the muscles in your upper back, all of your chest muscles, your shoulder muscles. It works your biceps, it works your triceps. It does all the things that you would typically be looking for. And then when it comes to lower body, this one's a bit harder for me to demonstrate, but you should do some sort of squat movement. And so this would be like a squat or lunge. You know, we did this, the air squat earlier, or a deadlift. And so again, the air squat is just sitting down in the chair and then coming back up. The deadlift is a hip hinge movement, and I can't really easily display this, but basically you want to be bending at the hip, bending forward, like you're picking something up off the ground and then standing back up. So that would be sort of the hip hinge movement. And then some sort of core movement. I think a plank is a good one to really help bridge the upper body to the lower body so you can transmit force effectively. So again, 2 to 3 workouts a week. If you did all of these movements, this would be a beautiful program, right? And you'd be getting all of those great benefits. And again, you'd want to be doing this as sort of that 5 to 6 out of 10 intensity. So it should feel like you're doing something, but again, you don't have to feel like this is your 1 repetition maximum and that you are just crushing it at the gym. Just being sore doesn't necessarily mean that you got a great workout. It does mean that there was muscle damage, but you don't have to be overly sore to make progress. Okay, so back to your physical activity. Now we filled that little physical activity vital sign questionnaire out at the beginning. This is what a good program could look like that does meet the recommendations. So at least 3 days a week or so, 30 to 60 minutes would get you in that 150 to 300 minutes per week sort of sweet spot. And then again, at least 2 of those days per week, you should be doing some sort of strength training or resistance training. So this would be like a perfect report card, right? A++. So you can think about where you're at. And again, this is not a judgment. This is just you competing against you. But think about, are there opportunities for me to increase or to try and work towards getting in this range? And I'm guessing there probably are. So how do you do this? Let's try and make this as practical as possible. But obviously you want to do this safely. So if you are not currently active, and you're thinking about it, see what sort of level of intensity you think is appropriate for you. But if you have diabetes or heart disease or kidney disease, or if you have things like shortness of breath or chest pain or things like that, you definitely want to see your provider before just starting an exercise program. Doing light intensity, anybody can do. If you're going to do moderate or more vigorous kinds of things, it may be appropriate for you to talk with somebody first. I did put a QR code here. So for anyone who wants to sort of fill out like a pre-workout assessment, it's called the PAR-Q+. It will take you through a series of questions. If you answer no to all of them, you are definitely clear to go and start doing stuff. If you did answer yes to some of them, it will walk you through on if it's a good idea to get sort of checked out to make sure that everything is okay. Again, we want to put very few barriers in front of people. So if you're already being active and don't have any issues or problems, you're probably just fine. Now, if you want to go be more intensely active, then you may want to make sure that you don't have any conditions that may limit you. But I think there are so many ways that you can do this. Again, and any activity is better than none. This is a shameless plug I put in for Walk with the Doc. It's a nonprofit I used to work with years ago, but they're probably in your local community. You can look them up online and you can probably find a walk to go to. It's a great way to build connection, community, meet some of the healthcare people in your area. But again, you have 2 doctors, your left leg and your right. Probably the best doctors you can have. But it's a really nice way you can sort of feel like you can exercise safely. Because even people like me and everyone else, we have to be just as active as you do. So it's a nice way to connect with other people who are trying to work on the same goals that you are. Now, again, I'm just going to leave this as sort of questions for you to think about for yourselves. But again, think about where you're at with your activity. How do you feel about it? Would you like to do more? Do you need to cut back? Where are your restrictions or limitations? But then also think about what would more look like, right? How would that make you feel? What good things would it do for your life? And then I think if you're struggling with finding an activity, you can always think about things you used to enjoy when you were younger, right? I can promise you there was something that was fun, and it can still be fun. So if there are resources or things you need, figure out, could your healthcare provider help with that? Or what would you sort of need to sort of achieve those goals? So I'm just going to finish with a few different hacks and suggestions here for people trying to be active. One, I'm a huge fan of partners, right? A workout buddy provides a tremendous sense of accountability, because if they're showing up at the gym, you better be showing up there, right? Because you don't want to let them down. And it goes both ways. You're helping them as much as they're helping you. So finding somebody you can be active with makes a huge difference in improving your fitness. If you really don't like exercise, that's okay. You don't have to love it. But there are other ways that you can combine it with things you do enjoy, right? So if you want to watch White Lotus or Severance or whatever your favorite show is, you could potentially say, hey, I'm only going to watch Severance on my iPad or my iPhone or whatever when I'm on my elliptical or when I'm on a bike or when I'm walking. So whatever it ends up being on a treadmill or something, then you can pair activities you enjoy together. So you're getting the benefit of the exercise, and you're also really excited to go exercise because you really want to watch your show. So that's a very nice way that you can do that. I mean, you can sleep in your exercise clothes. Again, this is all just to limit barriers. So if you've already got all the stuff on, you actually have to waste more time to take it all off, right? So if you just roll out of bed, you can just roll right into your workout and you don't even have to think about it because you're already dressed and ready to go. You can even leave stuff in your car. I've done this before too. If you find yourself with an extra hour, or you have a break, or the appointment gets pushed back, you can go walk around the whatever building you're in, right? Or if there's a gym that you drive by, you can stop on the way home, right? So being prepared gives you the option of being able to be active or not. I'm a big fan of talking to people and catching up on the phone. So again, you can walk outside or be on a stationary bike or whatever, and you can actually like connect with people. It can be a little more convenient, so you don't have to line schedules as much, to do it in person. And again, what gets scheduled usually actually happens. So if you look at your calendar, you probably make all the things that you put on your calendar in your schedule. Your workout can be one of them too. It's just we have to prioritize it enough to make the effort to put it in there. Right. And so I do really believe that everyone has the ability to be active. And again, some of us do need modifications, but there are professionals that's their whole job is to make it work for you. Right. And doing anything is always better than nothing, but really finding something you enjoy is so important for being able to maintain it long term. You don't have to go run marathons, right? You can just do whatever you're at right now, even if that's only a couple minutes, even if it's just sitting in a chair. There are plenty of activities and movements you can do. And again, you don't need to compare yourself to other people. This is just you against you. And literally doing anything, no matter how slow you go, you're still lapping everybody on the couch. So I think finding that purpose, though, is so, so important, because it will keep you doing the activity for a much longer time than if you're just torturing yourself for some short-term thing that is not really consistent with your long-term values. So with that, I want to give people time for questions. So just to summarize real quickly here, again, I don't run to add days in my life. I run to add life to my days. I feel so much better. I'm such a better human. I function better, and life is just better overall. So I don't need to worry about all the other health term benefits I'm getting, because it makes me feel good right here, right now. And I think that is probably the most compelling case to start working out, because you feel better today, right? It's maybe not the best weight loss tool, but it's so good for your health, and it'll help you keep weight off for sure. Combining some cardio and resistance training is definitely the path to success. And again, think about how you can incorporate this in your own life. And again, if you take nothing else away, again, more than 50% of the battle is just getting to your workout, right? Once you get to the gym, I promise you're going to do great there. So just commit to showing up, and I promise you good things will happen. Okay, so I'm going to take my slides down, but that was all the content I had for today. So thank you all for your time and attention. I'll put my email up there. We'll stop my screen sharing, and then Michelle, I think we can take questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That was great. I especially loved, and I know people agreed because they put it in the chat, the little exercise break in the middle. That was great. It was very practical. And Amy is sharing a handout right now, because the question was, what were the 3 exercises we just did? Those were great. I want to use those again. So Amy did a screenshot of those 3 exercises. You can go ahead and download it right now. So you can just have like that one piece of paper on your desk or wherever you find yourself, whether it's a park, anywhere, you can do it. Before we go into the questions, I do want to note that Dinio had changed quite a few things, and it seems like a lot of us had problems today when joining. There were quite a few people who couldn't see the slides, couldn't hear one of the 2 presenters, couldn't see screen. That's okay. Again, technology changes. We do have a recording of this workshop that will come out as soon as this is over. And so Amy will you will get that automatically if you're registered for the workshop. Amy will also put a link in the chat to our workshop product page that will have the slides as well. So if you had problems seeing the slides, you can just watch them, see them on there, download them for yourself if you would like to go through them. I just wanted to mention that and apologize. This was the first time we've done it since the Demio update. We were not expecting all of the changes either. Thank you everybody for hanging in there. And I realized that the issues were resolved as we were going through. So thank you for being great sports. Dr. Bonnet, thank you for hanging in there as well. This is not normally that glitchy at the beginning, and we do have quite a few questions. So let me go ahead and get in there for you. Here's the first one. What are your thoughts about circulation plates?
Circulation plates. I am not familiar with circulation plates, to be honest, so I don't know if I have a lot of thoughts. My thoughts are, what are they? But my guess is, go ahead. Maybe you can.
No, actually, I thought the same thing. I said, what are those? I was looking forward to it. So we're going to close this question. Jessica,
okay.
Please inform us what circulation plates are, and
so,
we'll come back to it.
So I searched really quickly, and maybe I'm familiar with a different name for them, but they're basically, I believe they're sort of a vibration plate, which I'm definitely familiar with those kinds of things. People have used them for like bone health. It basically shakes your whole body. Again, depending on the design of it, the idea is it's sort of activating muscles at a very fine, high frequency level. So it would improve circulation because, again, you're actually requiring a lot of like small muscle contraction. So in theory, I mean, circulation is just blood flowing. So any activity you do would improve circulation, even if it's walking. The plate obviously is just stimulating it for you. But they also have like higher intensity sort of force plates, which again provide a lot of micro muscle contractions and can also load bone some as well. So people can use them to stand on them, and they basically will sort of provide a full body shaking experience. I actually find them quite uncomfortable to use. They probably do work to obviously improve circulation, and they can provide some benefit. I'm not sure how practical it is to do for a long time. Some gyms do have them. They can be really expensive to buy, to actually have one at home. I think there's nothing wrong with it, but I would also say don't do your circulation plate in lieu of like walking or strength training. I think it's totally fine to add as a supplement to what you're already doing.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, muscle confusion. Is it necessary, or is that just for beauty muscles?
Muscle confusion. Okay, so I think usually when I hear the term muscle confusion, most people are saying you got to change up your workout to sort of confuse your muscles because they don't know what's coming. And I mean, they never know what's coming until you put the load on them and they just have to react. So the concept is fine. I think variety is nice. It can help minimize your risk of overtraining. But what I do worry about, and I often see this with other trainers, is that they will do the cool, sexy thing on Instagram that is a very complicated movement that is okay to include in a program. But I would say 90% plus of people honestly just need to work on the basics, right? So getting a good squat, a good hip hinge, doing those foundational movements, I showed you today, are way more important than doing 25 variants on one leg standing on a Bosu ball. Again, there's nothing wrong with them, but I would also come back to like, you want to be really purposeful about what you're trying to achieve, right? And so I see some trainers putting clients who this is their first workout, having them stand on one foot on a ball, balancing, holding dumbbells, and they just really need to work on basic form for like functional movements, not to be thrown into a very complicated regimen that's actually not even going to allow them to do much weight because they're expending so much energy trying to figure out what to do and actually train themselves to move correctly. And I think that's where you run into injury risk. So there's nothing wrong with program variety. I always will build it in, but you don't have to be that crazy in terms of switching exercises and changing the whole program all the time. You can honestly just shift the loads. So instead of doing, maybe 15 reps per set, you could go down to 8 reps per set or 6 reps per set. Instead of doing a flat, push-up, you could do an incline push-up or a decline push-up. So there's lots of ways you can add variety if you want to quote unquote add confusion, but the muscles are just going to respond to the load that you put on them. Really, the confusion is more for your own sanity and enjoyment. So to give you variety and make it fun.
Oh, that was great. Thank you. All right. Thoughts on super slow, less reps versus higher weight versus supersets?
Okay. Lots of questions in there. So again, fundamentals are most important. In general, when you're doing a concentric phase, which again, we'll get into the language here, But so like we'll use a bicep curl. So a concentric phase is you're going from here, you're curling up. The bicep actually gets shorter. And then the eccentric phase, you're letting it go down. So that's sort of the lowering phase. So in this phase, you want to go really fast as you can go. And don't worry, the weight's going to limit how fast you can go. This phase, you want to go slowly and controlled. It's going to feel a lot harder when you go down slow and controlled, but those are sort of the time frames you want. So fast up, slow down. In terms of the weights you want to use, you can use high weights, you can use low weights. And I would encourage people to use the whole spectrum of different weights. The challenge is if you're using lighter weights, you have to do more repetitions. And in order to get a good effect, you probably have to go closer to failure. And so when you do high repetitions, you feel a lot of that burning in your muscles. It feels very uncomfortable and really hard. So a lot of people, it becomes a mental thing where your brain's like, I don't really like this, it doesn't feel nice. And you might stop earlier than what your muscles need to respond. When you do a heavier load, you don't build up as much of that sort of burning, acidic environment. And so your muscles just fail because you can't pick it up anymore. So both of them can be good. And I encourage people to try them all. You don't need to do like one repetition. Like 6 is probably as low as you need to go with a pretty heavy load, but you can lift even 20, 30 repetition sets. It's just those sets get pretty miserable and pretty taxing because to do a true 30 repetition maximum set is pretty grueling. So I usually have people start with higher reps and then move down the more comfortable you get, because to do those heavy weights, you really want to make sure your form is pretty good and that you're not going to get injured doing a weight that you're not ready to do yet. So I would never go super slow up. So I would never try to go as slow as you possibly can to pick the thing up. I would always go fast up, but you can definitely go down as slow as you want. And making sure you do a full range of motion will help a lot with muscle growth too and activation. So making sure you go all the way back down at the bottom and then back up.
Excellent. Lots of good answers here, of course. All right. Does the 300-minute activity recommendation include the weight training, or is it just the aerobic activity goal?
Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't. Yeah, so it's more opportunities to exercise. So that 150 to 300 minutes is just regards to aerobic activity. But again, you can do that in any number of minutes you want. So even that 1 minute today we did counts towards your 300 minutes. So that's a wonderful thing. When you're talking about strength training, it really is just a session by itself. There's no time limit on strength training. And that's because one workout could take an hour, it could take 15 minutes. It really depends on what you're trying to train and do. So again, the guidelines are pretty generic. So it's just at least 2 strength training sessions, however long those end up taking you. But that is separate from your aerobic piece, which would be just minutes of sort of aerobic activity. So again, I guess I misspoke a little bit. If we were doing aerobics and jumping jacks, it would have counted. We technically did a little bit of strength training. So we'll caveat that.
Okay. All right. I can do sumo squat better than a classic squat. And I read something about the build rotation of the knee. Is that true?
So these are very specific questions. They're fun, but these are very specific. So these are different squat variations. And so a sumo squat, your legs are much wider than normal shoulder width. A classic squat, they're much narrower. So a lot of this comes back to the movement and functionality and flexibility you have in your own body. So I probably can't comment on if it's good or not good for you. Again, I think variety is important, but again, making sure you can maintain like a good arch in your lower back and you have good mechanics going down is probably the biggest thing. So sumo squats versus classic squats can sort of change where the emphasis is. So a sumo squat, you're going to be much wider. You're probably going to end up doing a little bit more back and inner thigh work. With a narrower squat, you're probably going to do more quadricep work. They're both going to hit the glutes pretty well though. So just depending on your flexibility, functionality, and what you're trying to achieve, either one can work. I'm not aware that one is necessarily better for the knee, but for your particular mechanics, one probably could feel better. And so then it's totally fine to pick one versus the other or to try them both. But again, this is where I think working with the trainer is really helpful because they can look at your mechanics, they can give you feedback, and they can also adjust your form so that you are doing the exercises safely.
Right. And I keep going back to one of the points that you made, right? And that's the exercise you do is the best exercise, the one that you're actually going to do. So if a sumo squat works for you and you can do that and the other one's just painful and doesn't feel good, then yeah. All right. Here's another question. Is it true that 10 minutes on the personal trampoline rebounding is equal to 30 minutes aerobic exercise?
So the short answer is no, But let me caveat with one sort of point here, which I didn't get into because it's a little too detailed. So when you're doing moderate intensity exercise, the recommendations are 150 to 300 minutes. If you are doing vigorous intensity exercises, those minutes technically count like as twice as much. So if it's all vigorous exercise you're doing, it's technically only 75 to 150 minutes. So if your 10 minutes on the personal trampoline rebounder are all at a vigorous intensity, technically that would give you 20 minutes or the equivalent of 20 minutes of moderate intensity activity. So if you're doing all vigorous, you actually get to cut that 150 to 300 minutes in half, or every minute counts as double if you're just adding it all into the moderate intensity. So you can turn 10 to 20, you can't turn 10 to 30. So no matter how hard you're working. So, but 10 minutes is still great. And so I would say continue with that. Again, it depends less on the activity and more on the intensity of it. So you can fill in the blank with swimming, dancing, cycling, guarding, running, walking, whatever it is. It just matters at what intensity it feels like for you that you're actually working at. And that would give you the number of minutes. But yeah, you can't unfortunately cut time in half other than doing the vigorous intensity thing. You can't cut it in a third, no matter what you do.
I do like it almost feels like you're cheating a little bit if you are doing more vigorous activity just because of that.
Well, it's harder.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of
ask anybody who's doing vigorous intensity, and you probably don't want to do it as much as
right.
The moderate stuff really, I mean, a 5 or 6 out of 10 is a very doable pace. I mean, it really is a pace that you could sustain for a long amount of time. Once you start getting into more vigorous and higher intensity stuff, it's not something you probably want to be doing forever because it is going to be hard and you will get tired and you will fatigue from it. So yeah, it is nicer that you can do it, but you also don't want to overload yourself too much too fast. Even though, yes, you're getting more minutes for it. It's hard to work at vigorous intensity all the time, though.
Thank you for that reminder. We also have to pace ourselves. So, do elastic band exercises really make a difference when you're talking about building strength?
So the nice thing again, and we talked about muscle confusion here, they have no idea what you're lifting. They don't know if it's a band, a dumbbell, if it's a cable, or if it's just your own body weight. All they know is how much load gets applied to them. So bands can be a totally great option. I think for some exercises, they may be even preferable. And they're very portable, which is nice. I think the challenge with bands is there's a lot of variability to the bands themselves. Obviously, if you have your own bands, you'll get some sense for how much resistance is on them, but it depends where you grab the bands, right? And how far away the band is pulled. So if you're doing like a shoulder press, for example, and I'm standing on the band and I'm pushing it up overhead, well, the band is actually a whole lot lighter here than it is when I'm fully stretching it out up here. So I'm getting a much heavier load on my shoulder way up here than when I am down here. Now for this movement, that's probably okay, but for some movements, it's not very good. So if you were going to do a lateral raise where I'm holding the band here and I'm standing on it and I'm picking it up out here, this is going to be the heaviest part of the band. And this is also the hardest part of the movement. And so you don't want to have a heavy load here and then have it really light down here. So depending on what you're doing, the band can be more beneficial or it might be less beneficial, but you do get some variable resistance with it. I like them because you can literally travel with them and go anywhere with them. They're very inexpensive. You can recreate most of the movements with them, particularly if you can like attach them to a door or something. So for those reasons, I do like them. It just takes some getting used to them so you can use them safely. If you've ever had a band snap you in the face and hit you, it hurts a lot. So you definitely want to be safe when you're using the bands and then just making sure, again, you've got good mechanics. But I think they're a great addition to any workout program and totally something that you could use as your form of resistance. And again, that's the beauty of it. You don't have to go to an LA Fitness or Planet Fitness. You can literally use household objects even to provide resistance for you. It's just over time, you probably need to either get some new bands that are more difficult for you or adjust sort of the program, what you're doing, so you can continue to progress.
Excellent. Here's another shortcut sort of question. Does swimming count as aerobic and resistance training?
Generally, no. So usually, again, aerobic is something you can sort of do repeatedly over a long amount of time and space, and you want to use your big muscles in your body, right? So swimming is a great form of aerobic exercise because it does a lot of upper body and lower body training too. Now, if you don't swim a lot and you go to swim, you may find that you're sore, like your lats are kind of sore from it, but it's not the same as doing a resistance set where basically you can't do more than 15 repetitions and then your muscles basically aren't going to contract and do that movement again. So they're different, just in the sense that, again, resistance training is going to have a very finite amount of time you can do it. It's definitely less than a minute for pretty much any set of resistance training you're going to do before you hit muscle failure. The reason is that you're using different kinds of muscle fiber types, which you probably don't need to get into today. But when you're doing aerobic activity, you basically can use oxygen to basically do all of the activity. So you have sort of a constant supply of energy. When you're doing resistance training, a lot of it, the majority of it, ends up being without oxygen. So it's an anaerobic exercise where you're really relying primarily on carbohydrates and quick energy to be turned into muscle contraction. And you're using very high forces and you're using your big muscle fiber types to do it. But those muscles, fibers fatigue very fast. So you can't do resistance training for very long because of the fiber types that you're using versus aerobic you could do for, tens of minutes to many hours of activity.
Here's one about warming up. Do you always incorporate warm-up exercise before any rigorous exercise?
So if you're going to do vigorous stuff, you definitely want to do something. You don't want to just start your sprint right out of the gate without having done nothing. Now, again, what your warm-up can look like can vary a lot. I mean, I think the classic thing most people do is they go to the gym and they get on the treadmill for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and walk or do something. That's totally fine, particularly if you're going to do aerobic activity. I think starting at a 2 or 3 intensity, getting your body sort of warmed up and moving around is a great idea. Now, if you're going to go and you're just going to lift upper body weights, I would say the walking on the treadmill it's still okay to do. There's nothing wrong with it. But I think of the warm up as getting ready to do the work that you're about to do. So you want to be doing exercises or movements that are training the muscles that you're going to be activating. So if you're doing lower body stuff, walking, jogging is great because you're going to be using those muscles and doing those things. But if you're going to be doing, push-ups and pull-ups and chin-ups, the way I think about the warm-up is then doing some kinds of movements that mimic those activities. You can just do very light versions of them. So again, if you're doing like push-ups, for example, for today, you could start with some wall push-ups that are going to be a little bit easier, or an incline push-up before you go doing push-ups on the floor. If you're going to use a machine, right, and you're going to do like a row on the machine, just put the pin at a really light level, and then just do a few repetitions with the lighter weights before you get into your working set. So usually if I'm doing strength training, I will do a few sets, which are really warm-up sets, right? I'm not taking them to failure. They're not very difficult to do, but I am contracting the muscle. I am getting ready to actually do some pretty heavy loads. So in those cases, I do warm up for pretty much everything, but the warm up is very workout dependent, right? So your workout should be targeting the muscles that you plan on using and activating for the workout itself to really prepare them to work well.
So since we covered warm-ups, let's go to stretching. Is stretching important?
The stretching question is such a tough one. What I can tell you is that there is not wonderful data as out there that really shows that stretching does much for injury prevention or even improving performance. There is some data out there that if you did a lot of static stretching before you do strength training, it may limit sort of your maximum repetitions from it, because again, a contracted muscle is a very strong muscle. When it's totally lengthened out, you could potentially lose some of that strength of it. What I will say from just a general non-research evidence-based perspective, most people have a lot of tightness, particularly in areas like the hamstrings, lower body, lower back, the gluteal area, IT bands, because we sit so much. And I think a lot of injuries that people have are related to lack of mobility and flexibility. But I cannot tell you that stretching for 20 or 30 minutes is going to alleviate those. What I will say is that if you have mobility problems or if you have musculoskeletal issues, you probably do have some areas that are overly tight. Again, a good physical therapist could probably work through this with you. But again, getting back so you can do sort of a full range of motion around a joint or different areas can make a big difference, I personally think, in terms of minimizing those musculoskeletal injuries. But there is not great data to say that if you stretch, it's going to decrease your risk of all-cause mortality or dying or heart disease or anything else. So again, it comes back to, is stretching good? I think it can be a totally wonderful thing to do. It can be very relaxing. It can be very rejuvenating. It can feel quite nice. My bias is that it probably does help some with musculoskeletal injury risk and overuse injuries. But if you said, I'm only willing to spend 2 hours a week on physical activity, period, stretching would be the absolute last thing I would spend any time on. So I would make sure I was getting my 150 to 300 minutes of aerobic activity. I would be getting at least 2 or 3 strength training sessions per week. I would even be doing some balance stuff before I even thought about doing any sort of stretching. Now, again, if you love stretching and stretching is your thing, totally fine to do it. But don't get distracted by stuff that is not providing as many good health benefits as the other things are, just because, well, I think I should stretch. There's nothing wrong with it, but again, do the high priority stuff first. And if you still find that you have more time you can dedicate, totally great to incorporate it.
Excellent. So we are at the top of the hour, and I want to thank everybody for being here today. Thank you, Dr. Bonnet, for being here. This was very, very helpful. And I know there's more questions that we didn't get to. I would encourage you to, join Full Plate Living, and Amy will have a link to our website. Of course, our membership is free. You can join our Facebook community. You can post some of these questions. We can try to answer them for you. And I do want to end with one question that I'm hoping kind of touches on some of the more personalized questions that everybody asked. And that is, how do you find a trainer who will be able to adjust for my health conditions? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, it can be tough. And obviously you're kind of limited to the area you're in. I mean, there is a whole personal trainer database, which we can probably put a link somewhere to, where you can search and at least get certified personal trainers. Having said that, there are like probably hundreds, if not thousands, of personal trainer certifications anymore. So like some of the bigger ones are like the American College of Sports Medicine, the NSCA, ACE, so ACE. Those are probably three of the bigger ones that are out there. But there's a whole slew of different kinds of trainers with varying quality. So I think using a database, at least finding someone who is certified and trained, it's even better if they have a background in exercise science or exercise physiology. Working with a physical therapist is always a great way to go. I mean, they have doctoral degrees in physical therapy. The Medical Fitness Association is a great resource as well, because their whole thing is to work with people who have medical conditions. So if you have, arthritis or hip pain or knee pain or back pain or diabetes or heart disease or anything like that, they're really designed to work with people who have, specific conditions or limitations. So they can be a really safe resource to use. But yeah, I think depending on what your need is, physical therapists are sort of at the top if you have injuries and pain and lots of restrictions. And then a medical fitness professional would be right beneath them, which is a great person to transition to. If you're pretty normal walkie-talkie, then a personal trainer can be fine. And I would rely a lot just on either doing your own homework, seeing what other people think or feel about them. But again, anyone who's focusing on like foundational movements is great. If they have you doing all sorts of weird things at the gym, it always raises my antenna a little bit to say that you just need to do the basics right, and you need to do them consistency. So radical consistency with exercise will get you the results you want, even if you're just doing squats and push-ups and chin-ups and pull-ups. You don't have to do anything fancy, I promise you. But again, if you want some variety and you want some fun, they can always offer new ideas and suggestions. But those would be a couple sources that you can look to find trainers who are at least certified and have a good experience with it. Again, it still comes back to working with the person one-on-one and finding somebody that you jive with. And again, I think that's the most important thing, is feeling like they can connect to you, you can relate to them, they understand your goals and desires, and can also build a program, that's fun for you. So I say that the relationship is really important, but you want to make sure they know what they're doing too.
Thank you so much for that insightful answer. If I see some of you already saying thank you in the chat for Dr. Bonnet, feel free to write in what you liked most about this workshop and this presentation. And at this time, I think I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody that was here. And again, thank you again for a great presentation. I know it looks like Amy's ready to go for a walk. We live in different states, but I will probably be joining you, Amy. Maybe we'll connect over the phone. Thank you again, everybody, for being here today. I hope that you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everyone, for joining. Great questions from everyone. I feel like we should do like just a Q&A session with all the fun stuff, but this was great. So thank you for having me, and definitely happy to come back again.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you, everyone.